Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to our 50th and final week Open Clock Club. And we are joined by Team Open Clock Club as always here, 50 weeks in a row without missing, which is pretty incredible. And Junior Open Clock Club as well, looking really excited at the prospect. So anyway, remember please that these events are recorded. So if you want to remain anonymous, then please keep your camera turned off. Otherwise, if you are new to Zoom, if you go to the toolbar, you will see a little icon called chat with a speech bubble. And we would love to know where you are from, what you've been up to, and of course, any questions. And so it's, as always, I say the same thing every week. It's been a super busy week in horology. Junior Team Open Clock Club admitted 52, was it? 51 people to the Facebook group today. So if you are not already a member of that, then please go to Facebook and search how to repair pendulum clocks and join our international community. I've been doing clocky things all week off on site at various institutions, doing surveys and stuff like that. So what I can of that, I'll report through the Facebook group. So we've got a busy winter ahead. We will be back actually with Open Clock Club on the 18th of December for our Christmas quiz special. So please make a note in your diary, but also that you won't be able to access that event on this passcode. You'll need a new one. So we'll put it out on social media in the Facebook group, but you'll need to go back to Eventbrite and register for that because this series is finished and we have to start again. So 18th of December, we will be running our super friendly Christmas quiz. Another event that you might be interested in is next Thursday, and I think your Team Open Clock Club put it in the chat, is a lecture by the Antiquarian Horological Society, who we always like to support because they're brilliant. And that lecture is next Thursday, so it's in a bit of conflict with our live stream, but it's by Jonathan Betts, and it's paraphrasing on the history of clock repair, so it might be of interest to all you people. So thanks to Sam. Hi, Sam. I think he's not actually with us this week. He's at a party or something, but anyway, good for him. Sam asked a question about the turning between centers, which is what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to talk about colleting, turning between centers, using a wax chuck, using a bow like this and that kind of thing. So that'll keep us occupied today. Just one question from last week, and that was, what do you do with the brass swarf from the lathe? And I think it was a kind of loaded question. Good question, because I remember in the old days when I used to teach, the students would all gather up the brass swarf from the lathe, burn off the oil, and then use that for bluing hands, which I found pretty annoying because hands really rarely need, quote unquote, to be blued. In fact, my experience this week in particular has led me to reinforce the idea that hands are kind of never make a full recovery. They are so difficult to re-blue. So I personally would avoid it. But anyway, if you have got a lathe, you can gather up the brass swarf, heat it up till it begins to glow dull red to burn off all the oil. And then when you're to re-blue hands, you can put the hands on there. But as I said, try on a bit of scrap material first, because what I find or what I see is the hands actually re-blued. Hands up if anybody has done that, put it in the chat, please, and how successful you found it, whether you did it with the sand, or whether you did it on a hot plate, or whether you did it in a kiln, or whether you did it in a charcoal fire, or whether you did it on brass swarf, and which method was most successful. I've tried everything, including in the old days, bluing salts, which are kind of banned nowadays and for good reason, and never really found any of them successful. So new making, definitely get doing it. We all want to see the clocks that you're making, but with in so-called restoration projects, then unless the hands have already been refinished, my advice would be to leave them as is. Anyway, rant over. That's what we do with Brass Swarf. Couple of sort of reflections from the Facebook group this week, and just something I've said many times before on these events is that when you begin, and hopefully these events have been constructive and mostly sort of from a community perspective supportive for beginners, please, if you can, work on clocks you own. Every week we see people getting into difficulty, and that partly relates to what we're going to talk about today. With inevitably, you start fixing clocks, and then a neighbor, a friend, whatever, somebody says, oh, I heard you're fixing clocks. Could you do this one for me? My strongest advice would be the answer is no, I'm really sorry. I'm still learning. And I'd love to do it, but I'm not a professional clock repairer, because you don't want the extra pressure of that person breathing down your neck and then having to find somebody to get you out of the soup once you get into it, because inevitably we all get in the soup every time we repair a clock. But I suppose the benefit of experience is that you get more resources for getting out of it, which you don't have as a beginner. Anyway, so there's my advice. I've said it many times before. So we talked a little bit last week about the theory of turning between centers, and it's kind of self-explanatory. I showed a diagram of it. You have two, in fact, we've got our lathe here. Let's just turn it round. Oh yeah, as long as it's not about blowing hands, is it? Please.
David says he has tried it using Brass Swarf, could never get the heat across the length of the hand.
No, it's really difficult to blue hands that way. I've worked in an institution this week, and every single clock had been completely refinished. It really made me kind of quite ill, including the hands. And the hands were a whole rainbow of colors, from blue to white to purple to yellow, you name it. A really sort of, actually reflecting on it, kind of looked bruised. So that's sort of what they were, I suppose.
People use Brass Swarf when making new screws.
Yeah, you can use Brass Swarf to distribute the heat. I think I told this story last week, but my granddad, who worked at the instrument makers, wait a minute. Here in York, Cook, Troughton and Sims. And they used to make watches and instruments, pocket watches and things, with blued steel cases. And he said that just turn that light down, it's a bit hot. There was one person who only did bluing, and they used to have a charcoal fire just so, and kind of feed things in a bit like a pizza oven. But that was a sort of full-time job. So here, I want to just try and move my T-rest out of the way so you can see. Tina T-rest. You can see basically we've got two, in this case, two what we call female centers. So centers with holes in them like that. The other end of this is a male center with a point on it. And if you've ever, as I said last week, if you've ever been to one of those kind of country fair living museum things, you'll have probably seen a green wood turner. So just getting a stick and making a chair leg out of it, or something with a pole lathe, which is exactly what we're going to do today. Here's a little device that fits in the vise, and it's just very simply a sort of ferrule that you operate with a bow. I don't quite know what this was for specifically, because this arbor isn't tapered, or I don't think it is, but it was basically, it's a little set of turns which you can adjust the sort of end shake. So that's quite nice. A Cohen maker, Kirkgate, Leeds, which interestingly, I'm always after a distraction, as you know. People ask me, let's just put that thing up between the centers so you can actually see. There we go. So we're going to put our arbor in here just to show the principle of working between centers. So you can see this thing now spins, and I'm using this watchmaker's lathe, but actually you could have kind of two nails driven into a board. that's the beauty of turning between centers. You don't actually need a fancy lathe like this. The lathe isn't doing anything, it's just holding these centers there. So turns are, you can see this is spinning pretty concentrically. You put a bow on there, and the great joy of it is if this work that we'll see in a minute fixed to this arbor, you want to take it out and you want to try it and then put it back, it has to be by the law of geometry still concentric, whereas you can't do that with a collet, and you certainly can't do it with a three-jaw chuck or something like that. So let's just have a look at the problem that we've got, and that is, I'll just move my lathe a sec. We'll get out my favorite tool of all, which tool avalanche, which is the old slightly difficult to get it oriented. And if you wouldn't mind focusing, please, camera, that would be really helpful. Something like that. Okay, so our challenge is that we've got a member on our Facebook group, I think, who has got a wheel like this. So sorry about the state of my hands, by the way. I've been should put my gloves on really because it looks terrible. I've been painting the fence today, so covered in grey paint or dark blue paint even. I put my gloves on to disguise. Been painting. So what you may or may not know about 17th, 18th, 19th century work, sort of French clock stuff and things like this, is that there are three components here. Okay, there's an arbor with an integral pinion. So the pinion is turned from the metal of the arbor, so those can't move. Then we've got a wheel with its crossings, and then we've got a collet. So there are three things here. Now the wheel is, if you can see, it's been turned away, but is riveted to the collet. They're actually two bits of material there. Let's find another one that might be a bit more obvious. These are often done very, very, oh, here's one that's more obvious, look. So here's our escape wheel, and you can see you've got your arbor, exactly the same thing, and you've got a collet, and you've got your wheel. Now, the problem is, or from a repairing perspective, if you don't know this arrangement, then what you maybe don't realize is that this collet, as part of the manufacturing process, is actually soft soldered to the arbor. So if for any reason you heat this up, whether you're letting the end down to repivot or something, you maybe don't realize that you've got to protect this collet with cool gel or a bit of cotton rag with water on it or something, because if you melt that soft solder, then the whole thing will be eccentric, and it's really, really, really difficult to get it concentric again. Yeah, there's a video on YouTube of somebody doing it and they do a really good job, but the best thing is not to upset it in the first place. However, if you do, then I'm going to try and show you how to get out of a pickle. I don't know how successful I'm going to be at showing you. So the French clocks, long case clocks, you name it, very early clocks, sort of 17th century stuff. Sometimes that collet is actually a piece of braze, so brass solder that's kind of turned down, which is integral with the arbor. But that's quite unusual. Mostly you've got a soft soldered collet. It's only really when we get to more mass-produced clocks where the collet is actually pushed onto the arbor and is a really good kind of concentric fit. Okay, so here's one look that's been taken off its arbor, and you can actually see here there's a little bit of soft solder in there, so you can't get this thing back on the arbor concentrically. What you have to do is to take the wheel off the collet, put a new collet on or recollet it, and then fit the wheel on. So the first part of this question is you must have the wheel concentric with the hole, or the seat of the wheel concentric with the wheel tips. Now, I've seen all sorts of holding these things in 6-jaw chucks and 3-jaw chucks, blah, 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 blah. Right, okay, well, whatever. The way to do it is to get a bit of hard wood, like this boxwood, or piece of, you could use MDF actually, but if you're using MDF, then you need to wear face protection like a mask to prevent ingesting the fibers. I did have a lovely little pencil here. So what you do is we want to bore the hole in the wheel concentric with the tooth tips. You can see this wheel's a bit beaten up, but it'll do for the job. So what you do is you mount up your bit of wood, boxwood, pear wood, apple, MDF. I've used plastic, used all sorts, but boxwood is the traditional thing. And the first thing you do, so put that in a 4-jaw chuck or 3-jaw chuck, doesn't matter. Zippy, Bungle and Jeffrey, and face it off flat, then drill a hole in the middle. And then what you do is, let's get a pen if we're in the ballpark here. So this is our wood, this end of things, there it is. We want to face it with an angle like that. There's a hole drilled through the middle, out like this, back like that, and like that. So this is our bit of wood or plastic or whatever we're using here. And what we're doing is we're going to get our wheel, which I'm going to show in green here, like this, slightly oversized, or the hole, if you like, the recess in the front of the wood here. So we're going to turn a recess like this, slightly undersized. And then we get our lathe tool and we open up this value here, larger and larger and larger. I've exaggerated these angles. They actually want to be nearly parallel, but just so the wheel eventually wedges in this hole like this, like that. And the beauty of that is you obviously can't take the wood out of the lathe chuck. You put it in, you leave it in, but you've got a bespoke concentric chuck for your wheel. And if you've got an escape wheel like this, doesn't matter, you can push that into the wood and it won't damage the teeth. And you'll notice how I've cut this away so it only touches the wheel, actually do it like that, in 2 points. So there's no chance of any kind of bits of wood or anything pushing it off. Sits flat, then admittedly quite gingerly, you bore out the middle concentric. Okay, so we've done that. That's called a boxwood chuck. If you want to read more about that, if you go to our Facebook page, last week, was it? Maybe this week, I can't remember, Wednesday or Thursday, I posted a link to a Dropbox handout that shows how to do it. Okay, with photographs and all sorts of things. So we've got our wheel and our wheel tooth tips and our bore of our wheel concentric. The next thing is, and I've got no idea whether this is going to work or not, we need to solder on a new collet. Now my little watchmaker's lathe's quite small, so I've got this weedy little collet here. But let's just draw that again, actually, for sake of clarity. It's probably the easiest way to do it. This is like a lifesaver. This process, it's totally worth getting some material and practicing it, because one day you'll have that situation where somebody's moved a wheel along an arbor. I've got it here in the workshop myself, and it's gone wobbly and they've gotten into a panic and they can't get it flat and they can't get it concentric. So let's take our, I'll try draw it this way. It might be actually easier. More difficult for me, but easier for you. So here's our arbor. Okay, I've drawn it with male centers on it, but you know, whatever. It's our arbor. Here's a pinion, say, for instance. You know what the score is. Okay, so what we do is we soft solder, not silver solder, on a blob of metal, brass, like this. Some old random thing, doesn't matter how particularly concentric it is, who cares? Okay, we soft solder that on. Obviously you need to soft solder it where the wheel is going to mesh with the mating pinion, and then you turn it away like I've done here at an angle like that, and you start trying the wheel on the seat of this thing. until the wheel goes on further and further and further and further. And because this is between centers or something, then this becomes perfectly concentric. The arbor and the collet, new collet, are concentric. This is the back, so we don't need to worry about that yet. And let's just draw it a bit bigger. What you want, let's just take this. So you start with a taper and you make the taper, there's the thing, less and less and less. So the wheel goes on, the wheel goes on. Then you cut away in the corner of the collet. It's firework night last night, by the way, the banging like that. And then again, sorry, I've changed color coding here. Your wheel goes on like that, stuck in there, tight against the face of the collet. Then you turn this away a little bit and you rivet it on. That is how it was done. That's how the vast majority of clocks between the middle of the 17th century and probably until like proper mass production, whenever that was, 1850 or something, were done. So get a bit of steel as your false arbor, some blobs of brass and some discs or material or old wheels, and practice 2 or 3 or 4 times recolleting until you've gotten it done. So I'll try and demonstrate it. I don't quite know how successful this is going to be, but hey, it never stopped us before. So I've gotten yay, bit of focus. So I've got here my arbor, okay. Let's pretend that's our arbor. And I've got a collet, which I've already turned down a little bit, as you can see. I've got to have the lathe this way around because otherwise I can't see enough what I'm doing. So the next thing we need to do, and I've got to take my gloves off now, is to soft solder the collet on. Now, remember, if you were here on Thursday for our live stream, I've said it about 4 billion times. You know, the first rule of soldering is the cleanliness. So get your steel wool, okay, preferably away from the lathe, but anyway, we don't have that luxury. And I'm just going to clean out the bore of the collet. If you struggle with soft soldering, it's probably because the work isn't clean enough. So I've cleaned the collet. And also you have to have somewhere for the collet to go. So if you can see there, I've put a tiny little bevel on the edge. If you've got a burr there or a straight edge, what you'll find is the solder won't want to flow underneath. And the same thing here, I'm just going to clean up this arbor. Now, obviously, you wouldn't normally do this in your lathe. It's pretty terrible, poor old lathe. But nevertheless, there we go. Let's just get that off, and I will break the habit of a lifetime, but a bit of paper on there just to protect the lathe from the flux. So I'm going to use the tiniest bit of flux I can get away with, because I obviously don't want it all over the lathe. So got a flux brush, little horsehair brush, and regular sort of electrical, sorry if you've all seen this before, but regular kind of electrical flux. I think this is actually American, some brand, but it works really well. I like my lathe bed protector. So the weeniest bit of flux on there I can get away with, because I don't want my lathe going rusty. And a little bit inside my collet as well. So yeah, this isn't good practice, by the way, soldering straight on the lathe, but I'm sure you understand why I'm doing it, because I'm in a rush and blah, 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 blah.
Can you zoom out a tiny bit?
No, I've not got a zoom lens. What do we want to see?
Just improve the angle maybe slightly.
Right, okay. Well,
there it says plumbing flux.
Yeah. Yeah, plumbing flux, not that fry flux, that one. There we are. Yeah, I'm on my macro lens, so you can see. So I'm afraid we have 0 zoom capability. There you go. So I'm just going to tin the arbor a bit. So let me get my spirit lamp. If you haven't seen this before, the kind of soft soldering thing, then where's my light gone? Then just look at, well, on Thursday we were doing it, I think, on the live stream. So look back through that. Or if you've got a long winter ahead, then please just look back through the archive of Open Clock Club. Do you go downstairs and on top of the gas bottle in the room, there's that little sparker. We'll see if I can light it with that, because I can't find my lighter, despite my best intentions of actually getting organized. I have actually practiced this, so it can't be far. Famous last words, it can't be far. So I'm going to light my spirit lamp. I'm using a spirit lamp as opposed to, thank you, as opposed to a torch, because it gives you a bit more control. I'm going to actually also just clean off the solder. Again, remember cleanliness. So you need to be clean, you need to have somewhere for the solder to go, and you need to have the right temperature. You need those 3 things for your soldering to be successful. Don't wait. Hey, I'm telling you off now. My advice is don't wait until you've got a job to solder. Just get some scraps of material and practice and practice and practice. Got a bit too much methylated spirits in my thing. Keeps burning my eyebrows off. But it wouldn't be Open Clock Club, would it, if we weren't burning my eyebrows off? So again, apologies to the poor old lathe. Right, there we go. We just got a bit of solder on there. So I'm going to slide on the collet blank. Just wait till that heats up. There we go. So that is now soldered on. Just leave it to cool down a little bit. I'm just actually going to break the habit of a lifetime and clear off some of that flux off the arbor, because I don't want it inside the collet. Is it cooled down? Yeah, it should be. So of course that collet was a sliding fit on there, so it's not going to be concentric. Even if you kind of drill it or ream it or whatever, it's highly unlikely to be concentric. And it doesn't matter, because what do we do with the, maybe it's still downstairs. Right, okay. Clean that off a little bit, get rid of that. Still quite warm. Let's see if it's reasonably concentric and reasonably in focus. Okay, so we've got, I'll just switch to manual focus just to sharpen it up a bit. There we go. Okay, so we've got our collet soldered on. So this is the process. If you find yourself with a clock that's got soldered on collets and for whatever reason it's gotten moved. Top tip with the escape wheel, and I've done this myself many times, is that if you're recolleting an escape wheel, and the escape wheel is typically one of those wheels that often needs doing, people move them for some reason and they get eccentric, which of course gives you an uneven drop, is that make sure you rivet it on the correct way, because it's pretty depressing to rivet on the wrong way. So here's our little collet on there. We won't worry about the back. Now you can see that this isn't particularly massive. Normally I'd make this a bit bigger. But again, it's a restriction of using a watchmaker's lathe. So there we go. So I've turned this just roughly to a pretty steep cone. So this is how you get things to fit together. And I'm going to reduce the angle of that cone until the wheel fits on with my, so you can see it just about begins to go on, but it's wobbly all over the place. I want it to actually, I will just try and move that around and help you to see like that. So now I'm going to do is just continue to change the angle of that, get rid of my pegwood, change the angle of that collet. Might be a bit better, but I think my head's going to get in the way. Until the wheel goes on. So you can see now it's not fitting on. Let's just get a graver. And if I can see, which I probably can't, graver. That's one. I'm using here a lozenge graper, which is an incredibly useful shape as opposed to a square section one. And the reason the lozenge graper is so useful for this exercise is when you want to cut in the corner to undercut it, so it actually sits down. That's a heck of a lot easier with this shape. So they're really worth digging out. So I'll get an eyeglass, and my head might be in the way, so I apologize. I'll just start turning concentric. So to turn concentric on any work like this, if you've got a lathe, like a a cast iron sort of lathe, you can just kind of go in there with your compound cross slide, and it'll make the work concentric. You can't do that with your graver, because what will happen is the graver will, it's just fixed to your hand. So your graver will kind of move in and out with any eccentricity. So the first thing you need to do is to actually turn it concentric with a series of kind of jabs with the point of the graver. So resting on the T-rest. As you can see, I put a whole series of kind of concentric lines in it now, which I know, which are a whole series of concentric lines. So I'm now going to turn the graver around and cut with the oblique front of it to make those into one kind of smooth ramp, if you like that. So now this is a bit where it's easy to get super excited and make it too small and it's wobbly. If it's wobbly, take it off and start again. It must be a good fit on there. You can rivet it, but it's never going to be right. So all I'm going to do, and again, the beauty of the cone, if you want, you can put some glue or Sharpie pen on there, and then you can jam the wheel on a little bit, and you can see, look, straight away, there's a little mark there where you know that that's the diameter that you want to work down to. So you can then sort of straighten up from that position. So there we go. It's a bit better. I'll keep going. I've been told that my head's in the way, which is moderately inconvenient. I know. I'll try and do it blindfold. It all adds to the challenge. So reducing the angle and diameter of that cone. If you're doing this with a compound cross slide, you need your cross slide set at an angle. If you set your cross slide at 90 degrees, you're not going to be able to do it because it'll be too big, too slack. So we're getting in there. It's moving in the right direction. About halfway up the cone now. So again, just reduce the angle and try. As you can see, that's the beauty of the tip over tool rest. Sorry, it's up in the top of the screen. I could try moving, but it might actually just make it a whole lot worse. Ah, that's better. Okay, so if we stick our wheel on now. There you can see the mark, see the little witness mark. We know we're about halfway to it being done, but we're also getting perilously closer to it being too small. So I'm going to be ultra cautious. And I'm just going to keep trying it and trying it and trying it. Hopefully when you do it, you don't do it in front of a camera for the first time. No, this is my first time, of course. And again, the hand wheel, Lozenge hand wheel on the lathe is really great for this kind of work. Right, it is 99% of the way there. So it's concentric, but you can see it's wobbling about because it's not against the face. I don't actually know whether this old wheel is particularly flat on the back, but let's not worry about that. So it's within, rather than guessing, I'll try and tell you. Eyeglass. So it's within about 0.5 millimeter of the face of the collet, this space here. So what I'm going to do now is just, how are we doing for time? Oh, I've got loads of time. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to face that collet up. So remember, this was turned independently of the arbor, so it's not flat. It's not perpendicular. Just raise up the old T-rest a little bit because it's low. Remember, turning with the graper is very different to turning with the compound slide. You don't have the tool at center height, you have it above center height. Sorry about my head, just see what I'm doing. So again, just going in there, and you can probably hear it's not cutting, it's not flat. So just cut in, and I'm going to cut into the corner to give that clearance. Okay, let's just get a brush because I don't want any swarf in there. Make sure you keep the swarf for bluing hands, really useful. Sorry, cheeky. And you might also want to bevel the inside of the wheel like this is done, a little kind of deburr, but don't deburr on this side because you want to rivet in onto there, and you don't want to be hitting it so hard to fill, sorry, any kind of gap. Right, nearly there. I'm just going to go back to the diameter now, knowing that we are like T-rests a little bit high, knowing that we're nearly there. There we go. So we now know that if the bore in that wheel is concentric, then that wheel is going to be concentric because our collet has to be concentric with the arbor because it's been fitted and turned on it. And we know as well that it's nice and flat because I'm just spinning that round because I'm so pleased that it's actually worked for once. Okay, cool, enough showing off. So the next thing to do is to rivet it on. I'm not sure we'll get that done today, but I'll just show you how to do it. Let's just move this round without disturbing it. What I want to do is just to put a little mark at the depth of the wheel. So let's just try and get that in there without messing it up. So I'm just going to put a little graver mark on there. And again, apologies for getting my big head in the way. We can see, just put a little mark on there where the wheel comes to. Take this off, then I'm going to turn this down and leaving about 0.5 mil for riveting. Okay. Frankie, would you pass that staking set, please? You know, the brown box up there. So let's just turn this round and turn it down. Should be able to do this pretty quickly. Thank you. So move my grave along 0.5 mil. and turn the collet away. You don't have to turn right down to the arbor. You can leave a little bit of a pipe of metal on there if you want. Let's get. Good question. Let's try with that. I might do. Oh, that one's even better. Great. Okay, cool. Thanks, Frankie. I'm just turning this away to create the rivet. That's all. We don't need much because it's such a good fit. I'll actually turn it down there, put that back on, double, triple check that your wheel is on the right way. So I've got, I don't know if you can see there, but if I get my ruler, I still own one. 12-inch ruler, which is a bit crazy. There's about 0.6 of a millimeter there sticking out, which is too much. So I'm going to get another graver, one that's a little bit more lozenge, might be totally blunt, and just take that down to about 0.4 of a mil or something, and undercut it as well, which will make it easier to rivet. Again, let's just push up our swarf and check this is flat. Okay. And you can see the beauty of not having that undercut on the face of the wheel is that you need such little amount of material here. Because of course the less material you have there to rivet, you know, it has to be strong enough to hold the wheel, but this doesn't need to be some, you know, disaster scenario. So there, let's get my ruler back out again and have a little measure up. Yeah, it's probably about 0.4 of a mil or something now. Okay, so there we are. Just try and focus in. So that's ready for riveting now, and you can see it's, if I just turn the camera around, if I can, like that, you can see it's flat and concentric. So tra-la. So if you've got yourself into a pickle and your wheel is not flat and the collet's come undone, don't panic, just get some scrap and practice and practice and practice. Let's just quickly rivet it on. Oh, no, I've made it drop off. Just put it back and check that it's actually still still flat. So that'll be a bit embarrassing. Right, there we go. So get some pliers to hold it this time. Right ones. Still not the right ones, but these might do. There we go. Let's get rid of that. Could you pass vice, please, Frankie, just on the corner there. That's great having an assistant, absolutely. Another assistant. Thank you. So here's our vice. And for riveting, I'm going to use our old friend, the split stake, brass split stake, easy-ish to make, but also pretty inexpensive to buy. So I'm going to support on the back of the collet here, so you can see why you don't finish that yet, because it's going to get a bit of a bashing with riveting. So there's no point in making that smart yet. There we go. We've got best thing actually for this, we used to have a stake at the college called the Devil's Toenail or something, and it was kind of a curved thing, and it was really good. So you probably want to make one here. I'm just using a kind of, if you can see that in focus, a sort of curved round thing similar. This might actually cut it a bit, so not ideal. Just get a little hammer. Now you could use a complete circle, which of course will squidge the collet down together, which would kind of be better really, but I'm just going to go around like this and hope that it stays flat just for the sake of the demonstration. So you can see I'm just rotating it with my finger, and because it's already a good fit, really need a bigger, more sensible hammer. That hole in the stake is actually, oh, I see, it's touching on the vise. That's why it's not working right. That's better. Duh. So ideally you'd have 3 hands here. One would be holding the wheel down and one would be doing the riveting. I've seen neater jobs, but I think it's going to work. The right hammer, but we'll get there with it. So yeah, as I said, 2 ways of doing this. One is to kind of do it like this, and the other is to use a full circle punch. But I said the problem with the full circle, I'm making a bit of a meal of this, sorry, is that you've got to hit it a lot harder. This way you can just use gentletaps.com. So you can go to the website www.gentletaps.com. How are we doing for time? Oh, we've got loads of time yet. Let's call that a day with this. Might have actually lifted up there. Yeah, I need to hold it down a bit more. Could bring your fingers, could I, Frankie? No, that was a no. That's okay. I just really need to hold the wheel down. Can you? Great, perfect. Then turn it a little bit. A bit more. Just keep turning it. Keep pushing down. Keep pushing down. Cool, thank you. Right, okay. So a moment of truth, a little bit of a rush, but let's just get our lathe back. Put this in. Yeah, it's good. Phew, he says. So massive relief. Let's just turn it. And you can see if we focus that wobbly lathe, it's dead flat. Okay, so all we need to do now is to turn off the head of that rivet to make it look smart, and we're done. So let's just, again, my head will be in the way, sorry. So we're just, there we are. So just turned off the little marks from the punch. Refocus, and it is done, fitted on. So you got the little blue mark there. So obviously what you could do now if you wanted is you can, oh, the solder in the way, so it's not fitting straight, but you can come in here now and make the collet sort of decorative and tidy it up if you want. But anyway, so there we go. That one day to one person out there will totally kind of save your life and get you out of a hole. Sorry, Spanky. Let's just do a little bit of other turning between centers in the last 5 minutes. So put our center back. So work holding. Okay, so that is, I hope, really useful in terms. No questions, Sam. Teamwork and Clock Club. Is everybody just met?
What's the devil's toenail? Was it like a watch case holder?
No, it was a punch. So it was, I don't know whether you can see this, if it'll focus, but it was a punch a bit like this, but it was kind of curved round. So it's a bit like a toenail clipping, but it was just the perfect punch for riveting on wheels when you're doing making, where you want to do this kind of controlled. That was my preferred way of doing it, rather than getting a full circle and punching the whole thing down, because with that, it's great if it goes well, but if it doesn't go well, you've had it and you've got to turn the collet off and start again. And the problem is, if you've distorted the wheel in the process, then you're really in trouble. So Sam last week was asking about these things here. These chaps called turning arbors, and they're incredibly useful. Again, turning between centers. So here, as a demonstration, I've got one of these turning arbors and a French clock sort of nut, just as a little test. So these are a set of arbors that have just got slightly tapered tapered shanks arbors. And for instance, I'm just going to put on this, it's got a thread in it, so it's not going to be very concentric, but French clock bell nut, just as a bit of a demo, like that. And so you can see that turns between centers, nothing to do with the lathe. Push it on there, and then we'll get our bow, which is a bit of bamboo and a bit of string. Sam said use horsehair, and he's absolutely right, but we ain't got no. And our resident cellist is in London at the moment, so no bows to steal horsehair from.
David L.
Yeah.
He needs to solder a new service onto a pallet of the fusee dial clock. Drop is far too large on entry.
All right, okay.
Electrician solder will flux core be okay for such an application? Yeah,
great. So here we've got our bow. Yeah, be absolutely fine. I worked on a clock the other day where the pallet faces had been glued on with super glue, non-aerobic type super glue, whatever it's called, and that had lasted more than 10 years, so I think that's okay. But yeah, we did a lot on the live stream pub clock, wasn't it, on refacing pallets. So if you look on our live stream, let's get a bit of oil on that because it's a bit squeaky. But yeah, flux core. But the key thing there is, again, make sure that it's clean, right temperature, bit of oil on these pivots.
He said it's very clean, but it's difficult to get the steel tinned on the underside of the curved shim.
Yeah. Well, the thing you have to do with that is make sure that if you're using, well, I don't know what kind of steel you're using on the pallet refacing, but make sure it's dead hard. Mainspring off the spring isn't hard enough, it just wears out. So this is just a little example of using our bow to power the lathe. So you obviously have to cut on the downstroke. The first time I saw this, it was Roger Stevenson from Frodcham's, the chronometer maker, and I thought, well, that ain't ever going to work, and it did. It was absolutely brilliant because it's really controlled, and my string needs to be a bit harder, a bit tighter. I mean, and Roger was colleting a watch wheel with it. Well, you get the kind of idea there, turning on that knurling, so it's a bit noisy, but really cool, easy way to make a kind of very simple but incredibly effective and accurate sort of lathe. So these turning arbors are super useful, and so yeah, we probably can't find the. Got another one somewhere with here's one, look. So here's one that I've put a bush on. So let's say you're using the hand method of bushing clocks. not the machine method with the bushing tool. Here's a bush, look, just a regular sort of bourgeon bush that I pushed onto this arbor. So let's put our bow on there. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but we'll get there. There we go. And again, we can turn that again, cut on the downstroke. Just get our graver. Again, I think my bow needs to be a bit tighter. Oh, maybe the horsehair has got more grip. I guess it does. Could use a bit of nylon fishing line. I think that's what Roger used to use. But again, you can see you can make your cuts to make the thing concentric. And then you can begin to shape it for putting in the hole with your that you've made with your brooch. For let's just have a go at that. Takes a bit of it's like patting your tummy and rubbing your head or whatever it is at the same time to get the cut on the downstroke. Yeah, I need little bit more bite on my bowstring. Just slipping a little bit much, but we'll get there. We can get there with that. So anyway, so there you go, Sam. There's a little demo for you. And I've only got 3 minutes left. Not sure we've got time because I want to say thank you to everybody. I'll just show you this if I can find it, which I may be. Oh, there we are. Last thing I wanted to show you about work holding. So we talked last week about collets, you know, the kind of thing like this, sort of a hand collet for a long case clock. You want to hold it. How on earth do you hold that thing to turn it or make it thinner or something? Well, what you do is you get a wax chuck, which is a bit of brass basically held in a collet, and you glue it onto there with shellac, okay, flake shellac, heat it with your torch, and then when it's turning, get a bit of pegwood and you can just center that up, okay. So wax chuck, really useful thing for holding bits of material. So that is, we're about out of time, so that is about it. Bit of a rush there, but anyway, the colleting thing will be, I guarantee you, incredibly useful. Just go and practice it. So it's time to say goodbye for now. So here we've got a thank you, massive thank you to Team Open Clock Club. There we are. Frankie's going to pass it across. Who's been here every week, answering your questions, saying hi to everybody, keeping everybody company. So thank you, Team Open Clock Club. Thank you, Team Open Clock Club Junior. Hope this series has been useful, getting people out of lockdown, being a bit of a community device. Remember, if you're relatively new to this, every single one of these events is recorded and it's on our archive channel. And there's also the live stream. So we'll be back on Thursday evening, same time with live stream. If you've got Open Clock Club withdrawal symptoms, we'll be back on the 18th of December with our Christmas quiz special. Again, you'll have to sign up for that. And we are here 24/7 with our Facebook group. So please send your questions and queries there. I'm going to be working on more read repair videos over the winter. So keep an eye out for those. And of course, none of this would have been possible if it wasn't for you people being there every week, supporting us, being super friendly. So please go out and spread the word, and we will see you again very shortly. If we don't see you next week, it's a little bit early yet, but have a happy Christmas and keep fixing those clocks. And remember, if you're a beginner, work on clocks that you own to keep the stress levels down. And if you're getting started or know somebody who's getting started for Christmas, then you can always buy our book, How to Repair Pendulum Clocks. It's available internationally through eBay. Yeah, thank you very much and take care. Bye for now.